I slid my finger under the gold-trimmed envelope and saw only my name. The restaurant had that mid-afternoon lull when conversations hover just above a murmur, silverware clinks against plates, and the smell of garlic and coffee hangs in the air. I was sitting at a table in the corner, the thick mahogany edge digging into my palm, with my husband Ethan opposite me and my younger brother Alex to my right. Between them sat Lily, Alex's fiancée, her posture ramrod straight, arms folded like a barrier. Condensation from our untouched waters pooled on the white linen tablecloth. A scattering of breadcrumbs was the only sign that anyone had eaten. The waitress hovered for a beat and then retreated as if sensing the tension. Lily's voice cut through the ambient chatter. "We've decided it's best if Ethan doesn't come." The words came out flat, rehearsed. Alex stared at the breadbasket as if it held answers. My mouth went dry. Ethan's jaw tightened. His eyes found mine searching. I didn't say anything at first. My chest felt tight, a slow burn spreading across my ribs. The clatter of a dropped fork somewhere in the restaurant made me flinch. Lily kept talking about guest lists and venue sizes, but I could feel the deliberate edges of her sentences. My fingers trembled as they circled the glass of water. I remember how the condensation traced a line down my knuckles when she said, "It's Lily's day, and she doesn't want any tension." Alex's silence was louder than any of it. I looked at my brother, waiting for him to look up, to say something. Anything. He didn't. The weight of it all settled in my stomach like lead. Growing up, Alex trailed behind me like an echo. We were 4 years apart, but our childhoods were braided together. Scraped knees on the same driveway, secret forts in our parents' attic, the smell of cinnamon rolls on Sunday mornings. Our parents placed a lot of value on family togetherness. Holidays were big and loud, with extended relatives squeezed around mismatched folding tables. It was accepted that when you showed up, you brought whoever made you whole. When I met Ethan in my late 20s, he slid into that picture like he had always belonged there. He was quiet but observant, a man who would notice if the salt shaker was on the wrong side of the table and gently move it without fuss. After we married, we moved 2 neighborhoods over but spent most weekends at my parents' house. Ethan would stand next to my dad at the grill, offering to flip burgers while listening to stories he'd heard a dozen times, nodding at the right places. He was the kind of partner who didn't need the spotlight to feel comfortable. He was also aware of etiquette. He often reminded me that inviting only one half of a married couple is considered rude and goes against basic wedding etiquette. Ethan and Alex bonded over their mutual love of classic rock and slow-paced Sunday football games. When Alex started dating Lily, a dynamic, fast-talking woman who worked in event planning, we all leaned in to make her feel welcome. Our family barbecues became a little livelier. Lily had a way of steering conversations and organizing impromptu games. Ethan admired her drive, although he'd sometimes raise an eyebrow when she reorganized the silverware drawer at our parents' house without asking. I chalked it up to her wanting things just right. Alex was smitten. Alex proposed to Lily on a crisp evening at our favorite lakeside spot. He sent us a picture of him down on one knee, the lake reflecting a sky-streaked pink and orange. Ethan grinned as he held up the phone, whispering, "They look happy." We hugged, toasted with cheap champagne, and started talking about wedding dates and colors before the ring had even warmed to Lily's finger. A few months later, a thick cream envelope arrived in our mailbox, addressed in looping gold script. I recognized Lily's meticulous handwriting. I sliced it open with my thumb, careful not to tear the ornate invite. The heavy cardstock slid out, edges gilded, embossed lettering announcing the joining of Alex and Lily in matrimony. I scanned it, expecting to see Ethan and Charlotte printed beneath Ms. and Mr. Instead, I saw only my name. At first my brain insisted I had misread it. I flipped the card over, then checked the envelope again to see if there was a second card stuck behind the first. Nothing. Just my name. The italicized letters looked almost smug. My stomach fluttered, then dropped. I stood at the kitchen counter, sunlight pooling around the cutting board and the half-chopped carrots I'd been dicing for dinner. Ethan came in, wiping his hands on a dish towel. I slid the invitation into the envelope before he saw it. "Whose fancy mail is that?" he asked, nodding toward the envelope. "Alex and Lily's wedding invitation," I said, voice steady. "It's beautiful." I forced a smile, swallowing the metallic taste creeping up my throat. I didn't tell him about his missing name. Not yet. I needed to make sure I hadn't misunderstood. Maybe there was a separate envelope addressed to him. Maybe it got lost in the mail. I placed the invitation on the mantel and texted my mom. "Hey, just got Alex's invite. It only has my name. Did the post office mess up?" I typed. A few minutes later, she responded with a string of bubbles and then a message. "Oh honey, they're keeping things small. Maybe they didn't have room for everyone's plus ones. You know how these things are." Her wording made my teeth clench. Ethan wasn't a plus one. He was my husband. It wasn't lost on me that wedding etiquette typically dictates that both partners in a married couple should be invited. I stared at her text, the blue light reflecting on my skin, and could feel the muscles in my jaw tighten. She sent another message. "Don't worry. It'll be fine. Let's not make a fuss." That weekend, Ethan and I went over to my parents' house for Sunday dinner. The house smelled of pot roast and rosemary. Pictures of our family lined the hallway, a timeline of aging haircuts and fashions. We sat around the oak dining table. Alex and Lily arrived late, laughing about traffic. Lily hugged my mom, air kissing her cheek, and then sat down across from me. She wore a blouse the color of cranberries and a watch that caught the light when she gestured. Ethan smiled at her, asked about venue tours. She launched into a detailed description of marble floors and high ceilings. At some point, talk turned to guest lists. Lily mentioned how hard it was to keep numbers down. She laughed and said, "We're trying to be firm. No random plus ones." I watched her eyes flick toward me for a second before she returned to her glass of wine. Ethan squeezed my knee under the table, unaware of the undertow in the room. Later, while the men gathered in the living room to watch a football game, I slipped into the kitchen with my mom. The cabinets were open, and she was stirring gravy with brisk strokes. "Mom," I said, lowering my voice, "why isn't Ethan invited?" She didn't look up. "They're keeping it small, Char. It's nothing personal." I leaned against the counter, feeling the cool granite. "Nothing personal? He's my husband." She sighed, set the spoon down, and rubbed her temples. "It's Lily's wedding. She's stressed. Just let this go. You know how families are. People feel obligated to maintain close ties, even when it's hard." Her words floated between us, sticky. I thought about the research I'd skimmed in an article a few weeks prior about how unclear boundaries in families can lead to stress and resentment. It mentioned signs like feeling overwhelmed and lacking autonomy. Standing there with my mother, I felt both. I took a breath and nodded, deciding not to push further. The smell of gravy was thick and heavy. I heard Ethan laughing in the living room at something my dad said. I tucked the hurt away for the moment, promising myself I would figure it out later. The invitation sat on our mantel for days. Every time I passed by, the gold trim caught the light and winked at me. I avoided talking about it with Ethan until the next family barbecue. It was a sunny Saturday, the kind where the sky is a sheet of blue and the air smells like cut grass and charcoal. Our cousin Serena hosted it at her sprawling backyard, white folding chairs scattered around, a cooler full of drinks sweating in the shade. I was by the grill, flipping vegetables, when I heard my cousin Daniel talking to someone behind me. They let everyone bring their significant other. "It's just, they're being weird about one person." "Who?" the other voice asked. "Charlotte's husband," Daniel replied. "I heard he's not invited." Lily's orders. My grip tightened on the spatula. The hiss of zucchini hitting the grill drowned out the next part of their conversation, but my ears rang. I turned around, forcing a smile when Serena asked for help with the potato salad. The words bounced around inside my head. Not invited, Lily's orders. I felt heat crawl up my neck. The metal spatula suddenly felt heavy. I excused myself and went inside to wash my hands. The cool water didn't stop the buzzing in my ears. Later, I pulled my parents aside into the quiet of Serena's den, away from the laughter outside. "Why isn't Ethan invited?" I asked again, making no effort to soften my tone. Everyone's saying their partners are going. Everyone except mine. My dad crossed his arms and avoided my eyes. "Charlotte, it's one day. Don't blow this out of proportion." My mom looked at a spot on the carpet and said softly, "We don't want drama before the wedding." "Drama?" I repeated. "They created drama by excluding him." My dad put a hand on my shoulder as if to placate me. "Let's not make this worse. We all have to make sacrifices for family." I stepped back. Their words sat like stones in my stomach. I thought about how unresolved family boundary issues can lead to anxiety and burnout. I was starting to feel the edges of both. That night, back at our apartment, I set the table for dinner. 2 plates, 2 sets of silverware, the overhead light casting a warm glow on the wooden surface. Ethan came in from the bedroom, humming to himself. He glanced at the pot on the stove, inhaled deeply, and said, "Smells amazing. You're magic." He leaned over to kiss my cheek. I stepped back and reached for the envelope on the mantel. "We need to talk," I said, pulling the invitation out. He looked at the card, read it, and then looked back at me. His eyes traveled to the blank space where his name should have been. For a second, his expression didn't change. Then his brow furrowed slightly. "Maybe they messed up," he said, his voice cautious. "I thought so at first," I said. "But I called Mom. She said Lily's keeping it small." I overheard our cousins say everyone's partner is invited except you. He leaned against the counter, fingers drumming on the wood. The silence stretched. His shoulders, usually relaxed, were set and tense. "So they just don't want me there?" he asked quietly. "That's what it looks like." I felt my own throat tighten. I wanted to talk to Alex. He hasn't answered my texts. Ethan stared at the card again. He ran a hand through his hair. "Did I do something?" I shook my head. "Not that I know of." He let out a slow breath, lips pressed together. "I knew there were some moments," he said, voice low. "Your mom's always been a little particular with me. Remember when she reorganized our pantry when she came over? And when she made that comment about my job not being stable enough?" He was right. My mom had always had opinions about our choices. She thought Ethan's work as a freelance graphic designer was too risky. She offered unsolicited advice about our finances. At family dinners, she would ask me if I missed real meals when Ethan cooked, even though his roasted chicken was the reason she went back for seconds. Her comments were small but cumulative, like drops of water wearing down a stone. "We'll figure this out," I said, placing my hand over his. His skin was warm. I felt the steady thump of his pulse beneath my fingers. I sent Alex a text that night. "Hey, got your invite. Looks like Ethan's name was missing. Was that a mistake?" I made sure to keep my tone neutral. The typing dots appeared, then disappeared. Hours passed. The next morning, I woke up to a single bubble. Can we talk later? We scheduled dinner for the following Thursday. Ethan offered to come, but I told him to stay home. I'll see what's going on, I said. He nodded, though his eyes lingered on my face as if searching for reassurance. On Thursday, I met Alex and Lily at a small Italian restaurant halfway between our homes. That encounter would become the moment I'd replay in my mind on sleepless nights. As Lily delivered her rehearsed explanation and Alex kept his gaze down, I felt something in me harden. It's Lily's day, Alex said when he finally spoke. I need to support her. His voice was barely above a whisper. So you support her by excluding my husband? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. He's family. Lily leaned forward, her fingers tapping an invisible bead on the table. Charlotte, remember the 4th of July barbecue last year? Ethan made that comment about our relationship not being built to last. I blinked. Images from that day flashed in my mind. Alex spinning Lily around on the grass, Ethan helping my dad fix the grill, fireworks crackling in the sky. I couldn't recall Ethan saying anything of the sort. What comment? I asked. He said we were moving too fast, Lily said, eyes narrowing. He said maybe we should slow down. It felt judgmental. Ethan had, at most, once remarked privately to me that Alex and Lily's whirlwind romance seemed fast. He hadn't said it to their faces. If he had, he certainly hadn't intended it as an insult. I stared at Lily. That's why you're excluding him? Because you think he said we were moving too fast. Her jaw tightened. It's about the vibe, Charlotte. I don't want any negativity on my wedding day. My hands had curled into fists under the table. I think you're projecting, I wanted to say, but I didn't. Instead, I said, if you're worried about negativity, maybe don't create it. Lily's eyes flashed. Alex's knee bounced under the table. I could tell he wanted to disappear. His silence cut deeper than Lily's words. As I looked at him, my little brother who used to trail me through grocery stores, now refusing to meet my eyes, something inside me shifted. I realized this was bigger than an invitation. It was about loyalty and boundaries. An article I'd read recently said that a healthy marriage requires prioritizing your partner and protecting them from hurtful family dynamics. It emphasized that no partner should have to endure a negative judgment from their spouse's family. I thought of that as I sat between my brother and my husband's absence. When I told Ethan about the meeting, he laughed once, a short bark that held no humor. I never said that to her, he insisted. His face flushed. He paced our living room, one hand on his head. I might have told you I thought they were moving fast. That's it. I don't dislike Lily, but apparently she's been holding on to this. I watched him, his shoulders hunched, and felt a wave of protectiveness. This man who had always shown up for my family, who had fixed my dad's leaky sink at midnight, who had mowed my parents' lawn when my dad's back went out, was now labeled negative energy. I believe you, I said quietly. I took his hand and guided him to the couch. We sat in silence, the hum of the refrigerator filling the room. Outside, the city lights twinkled. The days that followed were thick with tension. I tried to focus on work, but my mind drifted. I vacillated between anger and disbelief. Ethan withdrew slightly, spending more time in his studio sketching out designs, headphones on. When he emerged, he would smile like nothing was wrong, but the smile never reached his eyes. I called my best friend Maya, someone who had known me since college and had a knack for cutting through chaos. We met at a cafe with mismatched chairs and steaming mugs of tea, the smell of cinnamon and baked bread wrapped around us. I told her everything, the missing name on the invite, the barbecue whispers, the meeting with Alex and Lily. Maya listened, head tilted, hands wrapped around her mug for warmth. When I finished, she leaned forward. You know, there's research that shows unclear boundaries in families can lead to resentment and anxiety, she said. You have to decide where your loyalty lies. Ethan is your husband. You vowed to be his family. I nodded. Her words mirrored the advice from the same article that had been echoing in my head about identifying your needs and communicating boundaries clearly. Maya continued, if you go to that wedding without him, you send a message that you're okay with how they're treating him. Do you think that's the message you want to send? I shook my head. That conversation with Maya lingered like the aftertaste of strong coffee. Ethan and I agreed we needed more than our own back and forth to navigate what felt like an emotional minefield. A few days later, we found ourselves in a beige waiting room at a therapist's office. A diffuser in the corner sent out a faint lavender scent. Magazines were fanned out on a low table, their glossy covers promising solutions to everything from anxiety to clutter. The clock ticked with deliberate slowness. Ethan sat beside me, one leg bouncing, his hand tapping a silent rhythm on his thigh. I glanced at him and placed my hand over his knee. He stopped, intertwined our fingers, and squeezed once. The receptionist called our names, and we followed her down a hallway lined with framed botanical prints. Dr. Jenkins greeted us with a warm smile. She was in her 50s, with cropped silver hair and a kind expression. Her office was softly lit, the walls painted a soothing green, a small fountain burbling in the corner. We sank into a pair of armchairs angled toward each other, a box of tissues perched on the table between us. Dr. Jenkins sat opposite, a notebook on her lap. Tell me why you're here, she said gently. Ethan cleared his throat. My brother-in-law is getting married, he said. My name wasn't on the invitation. I took a breath and explained the chain of events. The single name on the invitation, the whispers at the barbecue, the tense dinner with Lily and Alex, my parents' reactions. As I spoke, my voice was steady, but but my heart sped up. Ethan stared at the carpet, his jaw tight, occasionally glancing up at me. Dr. Jenkins listened without interruption, her eyes following us calmly. When I finished, she nodded. "It sounds like you're dealing with a significant boundary issue," she said. "And boundary violations can have a major impact on mental health. Research shows that unresolved family boundaries can lead to anxiety, resentment, and even depression." Ethan leaned forward. "It's not the first time," he admitted. "Her mom has always made little comments about my job or our choices. I let it slide because I didn't want to cause a scene. But this feels like a line." Dr. Jenkins tapped her pen against the notebook. "You're describing a pattern of disrespect," she said. "And when patterns persist, it's important to set clear, firm boundaries. It's healthy to communicate your limits and to protect yourselves from situations that harm your relationship." She asked what we wanted out of the session. I looked at Ethan. "We need to know if we're overreacting," I said. "And how to handle this without tearing the family apart." "You're not overreacting by expecting respect," Dr. Jenkins replied. "Inviting only one half of a married couple is not proper etiquette. In fact, the general rule is that couples who live together or are in long-term relationships should both be invited to weddings. Your brother's fiancé is stepping outside of etiquette, and your parents are supporting that choice. They're asking you to prioritize their comfort over your marriage. That is problematic." Ethan's shoulders eased a fraction. He let out a breath. "We didn't know if we were being dramatic," he said quietly. "You're setting a boundary," she corrected. "Healthy boundaries are an act of love for yourselves and for your relationship. They tell others how you expect to be treated. It might upset your family, but people don't have to like your boundaries for them to be necessary." I felt myself relax slightly. "So what do we do?" I asked. "Do we skip the wedding?" "It depends on what message you want to send," she said. "Attending without Ethan would signal that you tolerate how he's being treated. Declining is a way of saying you do not. It's not about punishing anyone. It's about honoring your partnership." Ethan shifted in his seat. "If we don't go, they'll think we're making drama," he said. Dr. Jenkins smiled sadly. "Families often label boundary setting as drama. But the drama began when they disrespected your marriage. You can't control their reactions. You can only control how you respond. You're not obligated to maintain relationships that harm you." She encouraged us to discuss how we would communicate our decision and suggested we use statements, "I feel hurt when" and "we need," rather than accusations. She also reminded us to stand united when speaking with family, to avoid letting them pit us against each other. "When you face pushback," she said, "remember why you set the boundary. It's to protect your marriage, which should be prioritized second only to yourself." We left the session feeling lighter and more resolved. The late afternoon sun painted long shadows across the parking lot. Ethan unlocked the car, and we sat inside for a moment before he started the engine. "I feel like we've been given permission," he said, eyes on the steering wheel. "Does that make sense?" "It does," I replied. My fingers traced the seam of the seat. "We're not crazy for wanting respect." We drove home with the windows down. The wind tangled my hair. The radio played a song from our college days. For the first time since the invitation arrived, my chest felt loose rather than clenched. We talked about the appointment, about the examples Dr. Jenkins gave of how to phrase our boundary. Ethan practiced. "We've decided to decline because we aren't both invited. We value attending as a couple." I tried it too, the words tasting unfamiliar but empowering. By the time we pulled into our parking spot, we had rehearsed what we would say to Alex and to my parents. That night, we sat at the kitchen table with 2 mugs of chamomile tea between us, and we wrote out our thoughts. We didn't plan a script, but we outlined our main points: respect, inclusion, consequences. Writing it down helped. It made everything feel less chaotic, more intentional. We went to bed feeling more prepared for the storm we knew was coming. And when I lay awake in the dark, listening to Ethan's even breathing, I felt a quiet certainty settle over me. We were doing the right thing, even if it meant stepping away from people we loved. "Sometimes you have to set boundaries, even when it upsets others," she said. "Healthy boundaries are essential, no matter how guilty you might feel." I sipped my tea, the warmth grounding me. "So you think I shouldn't go?" I asked. "I think you need to stand by Ethan," Maya said. "Remember that piece you sent me? The therapist said you're not obligated to maintain relationships outside your immediate family. That if your family brings negativity, it's your job to remove the issue." Her words crystallized what had been swirling around my mind. I went home with a decision forming. One evening, as the sky turned violet and the city's hum softened, Ethan and I sat on our balcony. A cool breeze rustled the potted herbs we kept by the railing. The lights of distant apartments twinkled like scattered stars. "I don't think I can go," I said, watching a plane blink across the sky. Ethan turned to me. His eyes searched mine. "What?" "To the wedding," I said. The words felt heavy on my tongue. "If you're not invited, I'm not going." He blinked, taken aback. "Char, it's your brother's wedding. And you're my husband," I replied. My voice was steady. "I can't stand up in front of everyone and pretend everything's fine while they've made you feel like an outsider. A therapist said it clearly, when your family causes trouble, you're supposed to close ranks around your partner and tell your family to be kind. Otherwise it hurts your marriage." "I won't risk that." His face softened. His eyes glossed over slightly. "You'd skip it?" "For me. For us," I corrected. "This isn't about being spiteful. It's about respect." He took my hand. His grip was firm, warm. "Then I'm with you," he said. I don't want you to lose your family over this, but I can't ask you to go alone either. I called Alex the next morning. My hands shook as I dialed. The phone rang 3 times before he answered. Hey, he said, voice cautious. I'm not coming, I said. Not without Ethan. There was a pause. Charlotte, he began, please don't make this a bigger deal. It's just one day. Lily's under so much pressure. I closed my eyes, listening to the hum of traffic outside. She created this pressure by excluding him. He's my husband. We're a package deal. I read that you can't invite one half of a couple and not the other. It's common courtesy. It's complicated, Alex said. Lily still feels hurt? Then maybe talk to Ethan. But punishing him isn't the solution. He sighed, a rush of static. Please, Charles, don't do this. I have to, I said. My voice trembled but didn't break. I love you, but I won't betray my marriage to keep the peace. The response from my parents was swift. My mom called within an hour. Are you happy with yourself? She snapped. Your absence was noticed by everyone. Alex's day was tainted. I held the phone away from my ear for a beat, then brought it back. I didn't want to miss his wedding. I wasn't invited as a complete unit. You're choosing Ethan over us, she said, her voice sharp. I'm choosing to respect my marriage, I replied. Remember what that therapist said about putting your marriage second only to yourself? That's what I'm doing. My mom scoffed. We're your family. He's my family too, I said quietly. And if you won't be kind to him, I need to set a boundary. The word felt firm, like a wall I was finally building. My dad's voice came on the line. Charlotte, you've let this go too far, he said. His tone was cold, disappointment dripping from each syllable. You should have just come. I swallowed. Dad, unresolved boundary issues can cause anxiety and depression. I'm not going to let this tear my marriage apart because I'm afraid of upsetting you. There was a long silence. Then my dad said, fine. Do what you want. Before hanging up. The dial tone hummed in my ear. Later that night, Alex sent a lengthy text. He said he felt torn. He didn't think excluding Ethan would cause such a fracture. He asked why I couldn't just attend without him for one day. He said I was ruining his wedding by making it about us. I stared at the words, feeling a mix of sorrow and anger. I typed back, I love you. But this isn't about me making drama. It's about you allowing Lily to exclude my husband for a mistake that may not have even happened. When your partner doesn't prioritize your well-being over their family's needs, it hurts. I refused to do the same. I hit send and put the phone face down. The day of the wedding arrived like any other Saturday. Sunlight filtered through our curtains, creating patterns on the floor. Ethan and I woke up to the quiet hum of our apartment building. There were no suits to iron, no frantic searches for matching shoes. Instead, we brewed coffee, sat on the couch, and listened to the distant sounds of our neighborhood, a dog barking, a car starting, laughter from someone's open window. Ethan's knee bounced. I placed my hand on it, feeling the nervous energy. Are you okay? I asked. He nodded. Just thinking about what it would have been like, he said softly. I never wanted to put you in this position. You didn't, I replied. This was a choice they made. We decided to spend the day away from our phones. We drove to the state park where we had our first date. The gravel crunched under the tires as we pulled into the empty parking lot. We hiked up a trail, the air crisp and pine-scented. At the overlook, we stood side by side, looking out at the valley below. The wind tugged at my hair. Ethan reached for my hand. Our fingers interlaced, and for a moment, the noise fell away. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. Are you happy? She asked without greeting. Everyone noticed you weren't there. People were asking. You ruined his day. I leaned against the kitchen counter, feeling the coolness of the granite. I didn't ruin anything. I made a choice to respect my marriage. She clicked her tongue. This isn't how I raised you. Maybe you should think about why I made this choice, I said, my voice quiet. No partner should have to endure being mistreated by their spouse's family. Ethan has felt unwelcome for years. I won't pretend that's okay. My dad called later, his voice heavy. Your mother is upset, he said. Your brother is hurt. So are we, I replied. Is that not worth considering? He sighed. Charlotte, family is complicated. We value loyalty. Sometimes we do things we don't like for the sake of peace. Peace at the expense of my marriage isn't peace, I said. It's avoidance. There was a long pause. I don't agree, but I love you, he said finally. Call us when you're ready to apologize. Days later, Alex called and, in a hushed voice, told me something that cracked open the narrative we'd been told. Mom was involved, he said. Lily talked to her. Mom suggested not inviting Ethan so there'd be no drama. She thought it would be easier. I pressed the phone to my ear. Mom suggested it? Yeah, he said. I'm sorry, Char. I should have said no. Something in me went cold. My own mother, whom I'd confided in, who had told me to let it go, had been part of the decision to exclude Ethan. I ended the call and stared at the wall. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. I felt something like betrayal curl in my stomach. It's one thing when a fiancé draws boundaries. It's another when your own mother aligns behind your back. I called my mom immediately. Why did you tell Lily to not invite Ethan? I asked without preamble. She hesitated. I never said that, she said. Alex told me you did, I replied. He said you and Lily decided it would be easier if he didn't come. She exhaled. I may have mentioned it, she conceded. We were worried about drama. You know how Ethan can be. He's never been anything but kind, I said, my voice rising. You made him feel unwelcome for years, and then you used a fabricated slight as an excuse to exclude him. That's not about drama. That's about control. Don't talk to me like that, she snapped. I'm your mother. Then act like it, I shot back. Because right now, you're acting like someone who doesn't care about my marriage. She was silent. I could hear her breathing. You're overreacting, she said finally. I thought about the article that said people who maintain boundaries experience greater relationship satisfaction and reduce stress. I also thought about the therapist's words on closing ranks around your spouse and not tolerating disrespect. No, I said firmly. I'm reacting just enough. If you can't respect Ethan, then we need space. Ethan and I decided to step back from my family entirely. No Sunday dinners, no drop-ins, no calls. The first week of silence was both eerie and calming. The noise that had occupied my mind for months quieted. We spent time cooking together, experimenting with recipes. We took long walks in our neighborhood, past the bakery with the best croissants, past the park where kids played tag until dusk. At night, we watched movies curled up on the couch. Slowly, the knot in my stomach loosened. A couple of weeks later, my mother sent a text. We need to talk. I'm ready to apologize. I showed it to Ethan. He raised an eyebrow. Do you think she means it? He asked. I don't know, I said. But I'll hear her out. We met at a coffee shop. The air smelled of espresso and baked goods. My mother arrived in a coat that still smelled faintly of her perfume. She looked tired. We sat across from each other, cups of coffee between us like neutral territory. She said she was sorry if I felt hurt. Sorry if Ethan felt unwelcome. Sorry if we thought they had excluded him intentionally. Her apology was littered with ifs, conditional statements that made my chest ache. I told her as calmly as I could that an apology that doesn't acknowledge what happened doesn't heal anything. She bristled. We didn't want drama, she repeated. It was about keeping the peace. I took a breath. Excluding someone isn't peace. It's conflict delayed, I said. For years you made comments about Ethan's work, his cooking, his choices. He put up with it because he loves me. And then you decided he wasn't good enough to sit at our family's table. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't realize how hurtful we were, she said softly. I miss you. I miss him. If you want to repair this, you need to apologize directly to him, I said. No more EFS. You need to say what you did and why it hurt. You also need to promise that you'll treat him with respect. Otherwise, we can't be part of the same space. She looked down at her coffee, stirring it even though it was black. I'll try, she said. I don't want to lose my daughter. I nodded. I don't want to lose my parents. But we can't go back to how things were. A few days later, Ethan received a text from my mom. It was short, I'm sorry for any hurt caused. I hope we can move forward as a family. He showed it to me. We both stared at the screen. The words were neatly typed, impersonal. No acknowledgement of the specific actions or the years of subtle jabs, but it was an attempt. Ethan shrugged. It's something, he said. But I'm not going to pretend everything's fine. We agreed that our boundaries would remain. We would only attend family events if invited together and treated with respect. We wouldn't tolerate passive aggressiveness. We would leave if lines were crossed. It wasn't about cutting everyone off. It was about protecting ourselves. Out of all of them, Alex was the only one who truly tried to bridge the gap. He asked to meet for a drink. We sat at a bar downtown, low lighting, old jazz on the speakers. He admitted he was wrong. He said he should have defended Ethan. He said he let Lily's discomfort steer him. He apologized for his silence. It felt sincere. I'm sorry for the role I played, he said, swirling his drink. Lily still thinks she was right. She doesn't want to apologize. I sighed. Then nothing really changes, I said. We can be siblings, but if your wife can't be in a room with mine without holding a grudge, we can't all be together. He nodded, I said. I hope she'll come around, he said. We sat in companionable silence for a while, the weight between us lighter for having been addressed. When we left, he hugged me tightly, like he used to when we were kids. Ethan and I continued to build our own life. We planted herbs on the balcony and watched them thrive. We painted the walls of our living room a deep blue, the color of twilight. We started planning a vacation to Italy, a dream we'd shelved when we first got married because money was tight. We began discussing moving to a new city, somewhere by the coast, where the sea breeze could wash away old ghosts. We saw my parents occasionally, always in neutral places. They were polite. My mom would ask Ethan about his work, but the questions were surface level. She'd compliment the way he dressed. There were no snide comments, but there was also a new distance. We were all careful, tiptoeing around the elephant that had moved from the center of the room to the corner. Sometimes late at night, I would lie awake beside Ethan and think about how complicated family is. I remembered reading that 68% of adults feel obligated to maintain close ties with family, even when it negatively affects their mental health. I thought about the therapist's assertion that your marriage should be prioritized second, only to yourself. I thought about loyalty, about protecting your partner from harm. I understood, in a visceral way, how those concepts intersect. As time passed, the initial sting faded. The scar remained. It served as a reminder of what happens when boundaries are crossed and not respected. It reminded us to communicate clearly, to prioritize each other, to not sweep discomfort under the rug for the sake of appearance. We were cautious with my family, but we also found new ways to connect. My mom sent recipes, and Ethan would occasionally text her a photo of his version of her pot roast. My dad would forward funny videos. Alex and I kept up our weekly check-ins, sometimes including Ethan, sometimes not. Lily maintained her distance. We accepted that. We took that trip to Italy the following spring. We wandered through narrow cobblestone streets, tasting gelato in Florence, watching sunlight bounce off the surface of the Arno River. On a quiet morning in Tuscany, we sat under a vine-covered pergola, the smell of olive trees all around us, and talked about everything we had been through. Ethan reached across the table, fingers brushing mine. "Do you ever regret anything about how we handled it?" he asked. I stared at the rolling hills, the rows of grapevines stretching into the distance. I thought about the tears, the anger, the silence. I thought about my mother's conditional apology, Alex's regret, Lily's stubbornness. I thought about the moments Ethan and I held each other through the chaos. "No," I said, turning back to him. "I regret that it happened, but I don't regret standing by you." He smiled, his eyes crinkling. "Me neither." A breeze rustled the leaves above us. In the distance, church bells tolled. I closed my eyes and listened, breathing in the scent of earth and sunlight. The world felt wide open. When we returned, we started looking for apartments by the coast. We settled on a small town where the ocean was a short walk away. Our evenings were punctuated by the sound of waves and the call of seagulls. In this new place, we built new routines. We invited friends over for dinner and shared our story with those who asked, not out of bitterness, but as a cautionary tale about boundaries and loyalty. Occasionally, my parents would visit. They'd stand on the beach with us, toes sinking into the sand, the wind tangling my mother's hair. She'd watch Ethan teach our neighbor's kid how to skip stones and smile. Sometimes she'd catch my eye, and there would be a flicker of regret, maybe understanding. Once, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "I'm glad you're happy." In the end, our family dynamic had shifted irrevocably. The old version of us, with its unquestioned loyalty and unspoken expectations, was gone. In its place was something more honest, if more distant. It was built on the understanding that relationships require respect, that boundaries aren't walls but guidelines for kindness. We had learned that you cannot force people to see your partner the way you do, but you can insist they treat them with dignity. If they refuse, you have the right to step away. One evening, months later, I sat on our porch as the sun dipped into the ocean. The sky burned in shades of orange and purple, the water reflecting the last light of day. Ethan was inside, plating dinner. The smell of garlic and tomatoes drifted through the open door. A pair of gulls wheeled overhead, their cries sharp against the gentle hush of the sea. I thought about all the dinners we'd missed at my parents' table, the seats we'd left empty, the silence that followed. I also thought about the dinners we had created in their place, simple meals shared on our balcony, laughter echoing off the walls of our own home, the ease of being ourselves without walking on eggshells. The porch railing was warm beneath my palms. The ocean stretched out before me, endless and ever-moving. Ethan stepped outside, 2 plates balanced expertly, and set one in front of me. He sat down, our knees brushing. We ate in companionable quiet, punctuated only by the rhythmic crash of waves. I didn't know what holidays would look like, or how often we'd see my family, or whether Lily would ever come around. The uncertainty didn't feel heavy anymore. Instead, it felt like the open sea, vast, unpredictable, and full of possibility.